In this video, I'm going to show you guys exactly how to spin up a Docker container running a Postgres image. And then I'm going to show you how to bash into it, as well as how to connect from an external application. We're going to be connecting from our local machine, as well as from a Spring Boot application. So if you don't have Docker installed on your machine, go ahead and navigate to docker.com/get Docker. And you can see that it's available for all of these operating systems. So I'm on a Mac, so I use the Apple system, but if you're on Windows, Ubuntu, go ahead and pick the one available for you. And you can download a Docker Community Edition, and also you need to actually create an account in order to be able to download Docker. So once you download and install Docker, then if you navigate to your terminal or command line, if you type docker --help, you should see a bunch of commands that you can use with Docker. So what I want you to do first, before we actually start with this tutorial, is if you go to Docker Hub, so hub.docker.com, and then browse for Postgres. Right here you can see that you have this Postgres image, and these are all the versions right here with the tags essentially. And then you have a quick reference. You can learn more about Postgres. So Postgres, it's an object relational database, and then they have a guide on how to spin up this instance. So the first thing that we need to do actually is to pull up this Docker image. So we're going to pull up this. So we're going to download it. Essentially, we're going to download this image into our local machine. So to do that, let's go ahead and simply open up terminal, and I'm going to clear that. I'm going to say Docker and then pull and then Postgres. So don't just simply say Postgres, because right here you see that we have different tags. So right here you see that we have 9.6.9, and these are all the versions. So what I want to do is to actually get the Alpine version, because it's the smallest image size, and that's the one that you should be using if you are testing out things locally. So I'm going to go back to my command line or terminal if you are, or actually terminal or command line if you are on Windows, and then simply say Alpine. So this will actually do nothing for me because I already have this image installed, actually downloaded. So for you, it would actually go through a series of steps, and then you could actually see what it needs to download to construct this image. So now that you do have this image downloaded, what you can do is simply say Docker and then images. And right here you see that I only have one image, which is the Docker, or actually which is the Postgres, and the tag is Alpine. So now what I'm going to do is, if I open up the docs and scroll down, so right here you see that they say how to start the Postgres instance. So let's go ahead and use that command to start an instance. So just let me pull that up and pull this down a little bit, just like that, so you can see perfect. So I'm going to clear the console, and for us to spin up that instance is simply by running the Docker command and then run, and then we have to give it a name, so --name, and then name it as Postgres-0. So this could actually be any name that you prefer, but for now I'm going to pick Postgres-0. And then we have to pass an environment variable, so -e Postgres_password, and then you can pick a password. So I'm going to say password, and then I need to run this in detached mode, and then Postgres. So this Postgres is the actual image. So in our case, we have the Alpine version, so simply say : and then Alpine. And also, I almost forgot, but we have to expose the port. So this port right here, 5432, so we want to expose the container port to the outside world. So to do that, we're simply going to say -p and then 5432:5432, just like that. So I'm going to press enter, and now you can see that this container is up and running. So now if I say Docker, all lowercase, Docker PS, you can see that if I pull this full screen, you can see that this container is running the Postgres Alpine image, and you can see that the status is up, and right here you can see that it's exposing the port 5432, and this is the name that we have given it. So now let's actually go ahead and bash into this container because we have a Postgres instance running inside of it. So to do so, just let me clear the screen, run this command again, because I'm going to show you how to use this name right here. So I'm going to just say docker and then exec. So exec, and this will be in interactive mode, and we want to exec inside of this Postgres 0. So the name of this container is Postgres 0. Otherwise, you could actually use the actual ID, but we have the name. So what we want to exec is the bash command. So bash, enter, and you can see that there is no container Postgres, and that's because I did actually misspelled Postgres. So what I'm going to do is grab this name and then run the same command, but right here, actually, in fact, I said Postgres. So and then R here. So this is it's a wrong name, but you get the idea. So now I'm going to press enter, and now you are inside of the actual container. So if I type pwd, you can see that I'm in the root folder. But if I do ls, you can see that this is the Linux file structure. So now if I type psql, you see that I do have psql, but I need to get the root access. So in fact, if I clear that and say psql and then dash help, you see that these are all the commands that are available within psql. So what I want is psql dash and then capital U for username, and then simply pass the username which has the root access, so Postgres. So now we are inside of Postgres. So now we have access to all the PSQL commands and create databases and so on and so forth. So let's actually go ahead and see the actual user that we have. So I'm going to say / and then du, and right here you see that we have the Postgres user and it's the super user. Now if you've done some kind of relational database, now this is the time for you to shine with your SQL commands. So let's go ahead and create a new database. So create database and then test column. Make sure to have column, otherwise it won't work. So enter. So that works. To view all the databases, simply type / or actually / and then D, or actually L. And right here you see that we have the test database. So let's go ahead and connect to it. So I'm going to say / C and then test. Enter, and you see that we are connected inside of this Postgres database called test. So now if I go ahead and say / and then D, we have no relations whatsoever. So there you go, guys. We successfully managed to spin up a Docker container running Postgres Alpine, and from now on you can create tables, so on and so forth. But now let's say that we want to connect to this container running this Postgres image from an application. So first let's go ahead and connect from the actual from my local machine, or it could be from your local machine as well. So make sure that first you have PSQL installed in your machine, and then you'll be able to run all the PSQL commands from the terminal. So I just want to show you that I do have Postgres installed on my machine, but you can see that the version is 9.6 and is not running. So what we want to do is to connect to this one right here, which is running through Docker. So let's go ahead and simply say PSQL and make sure you have PSQL in your path. And in fact, if I say less and then column, or actually tilde, and then dot ZSHRC, and you can see that I do have Postgres in the path. So I'm going to press Q, And then what I'm going to do is simply say psql --help. So I'd like you guys to see, all the commands available for us. So the connection options are, host, so right here, then the port, username, and then the actual password. So now let's go ahead and simply say psql and then -h localhost. So we're connecting to localhost, and then -p, the port of it is 5432. So remember that we did expose 5432. So if I go up a little bit, so the command that we did use, so right here, so this is saying expose the container port 5432 to the outside world, and the outside world will connect to it via the same port. So you could actually change this port to something else, but usually you just stick with the same port. So now let me go back to my terminal, and then what I want to do is to actually pass the actual user, so dash and then u and then Postgres, and then enter. Now we need to specify the password. Remember the password that you defined. So if I go back, so right here the password was password, so I'm going to say password, and now we are in. So we're actually inside of that container. So, or actually that instance running Postgres. So what I'm going to do is, if I do the same command, so backslash and then L, you can see that we have the test database. If I go ahead and connect to test, so test, and then /D, so there are no relations there. So again, so now we could actually go ahead and create a new table. So in fact, just let me go ahead and connect, or actually create. So I'm going to quit out of this and then connect to the same thing, password. Actually could have gone back, but it's fine. So let me go ahead and create a new database. So create database and then test2, and then let's connect to test2, test, and then 2, and then create table, and then let's say user without any fields, or actually without any columns. So enter. Oh, actually this is user, so this can't be user. So let's say student, enter, and that works. So user is a reserved keyword in Postgres. So now go ahead and say backslash and then DT column, and you can see that we have this table right here. And if I go ahead and simply say /D and then the actual table, so student, and you can see that we have no columns whatsoever. So there we go, guys. So one last thing that I want to show you is how we can connect to the same instance running. So now we connected via our local machine using a terminal, but let's say that you have an application and you want to connect to it. So right now I do have an application right here, and if you are interested to learn how I did this, go ahead and check out my course on Spring Boot and databases, and I do cover how to create this entire application, which is awesome. So what I have here is a connection to this database, and if I open up this migration, so I'm using Flyway for database migrations. So right here I've got this table called email, which has an ID and email, and then I also have a table called student, which has name, course, and then an email. So let's actually go ahead and connect to it via this application. So it's very straightforward, really. So all you have to do is to define in Spring World, and this should be almost the same in whatever language or framework that you are using. It should be pretty much the same. So I do have this application.yaml, and right here, this is where I just define everything. So I define the port, the username, the password, the host, and then the database name. So and we have obviously the JDBC URL. So this is Java world, so JDBC provides us a bridge to connect to databases. And then this is the URL. So you can see, and what I have to do now is, because inside of that database there are no tables whatsoever. So if I go back and connect to test, and if I do /d plus, you see that there are no relations, right? So if I start this application, so I'm going to start the application, just give you a second. There we go. So you can see that one migration was applied. So first it was empty, and then one migration was applied. And what I'm going to do now is actually check the database. So if I go back and run the same command, and there we go. So you see that we have email, flyaway schema. This is from scope flyaway, and then we have student. And if I do a DT and then on email, you see that, or actually, sorry, the plus on email, you see that we have ID and email. And if I do DT plus on the actual student, you see that we have ID, name, course, and email ID. Now let's go ahead and insert a student to this database. So insert into student, and what we want is the actual ID, so name and then course. So this student doesn't have an ID for now. And then values, and then what we want is UID and then generate. So this is a function from Postgres. This will give us a random UID, and then John, and then the course is finance, and then end that with semicolon, enter. And you can see that we have an error, and that's because we have to install the extension to generate UID. So it's very simple. So create extension if not exists, and then the extension name, and make sure it's capital, double quotes. So it's UID and then OSSP, and then enter. There we go. If I do select and then UID generate and then v1 invoke this function, you see that we have a random UID. So let's go ahead and insert the student. So this should be v1, by the way, and then v1, just like that, invoke that, enter. You can see that worked. Select, start from, and then student, semicolon, otherwise it won't work. And you can see that we have this student right here. So again, let me actually go ahead and hit my endpoint and see if we have John inside of the database. So I'm going to open up my web browser, full screen, local host, and then 8080 /API v1 /students, enter. And there we go. So you see right here that we have John inside of our database. And just to prove a point, if I kill the container, so just let me go back to the actual container. So if I scroll down, if I quit out of this, and to quit is Command P and then Q, and the container now is gone. So if I now try to connect to it via the console, so my local machine, or actually terminal, if I pretty much just quit out of this, so /Q, Postgres, and then the password is password. Well, actually this still works, and that's because we need to kill completely. So to kill the actual container, so if I do docker ps, you see that this is the ID. So I'm going to say docker stop and then the ID, enter. Just give you a second. There we go. And if I now try to do the same thing as I did, so quit out of that and then connect to that, and you can see that could not connect to the server and it was refused. And the same with my application. So if I refresh this, you see that this will hang here forever and eventually it will time out. So there we go, guys. I hope that this tutorial was useful, because I know a lot of you sometimes want to connect to real databases. And there we go. So Docker is amazing, Postgres is amazing, and make sure to follow me on my Instagram, so Amigos Code. So this is where I provide a lot of tips, programming tips, quotes, motivational quotes. So just follow me, because the actual community is growing. Also, go ahead and join me to my brand new Facebook group, where we can have discussions about any topics, and eventually you can tell me what you want to see from me, and I will make it happen. And last but not least, go ahead and visit www.amigoscode, where you can learn about whatever we covered here. So Spring Boot, Postgres, Docker, React.js, so on and so forth, and even Java streams. So I've got a bunch of more courses coming up, so stay tuned. Make sure to subscribe to my channel and follow me on my Instagram, as I mentioned, and join me on the next video. See ya.